is Meenakshi Iyer. I'm doing my fellowship program at Caregiver Sathi. Today, I have a very special guest on our Gentle Warrior session, season 2. I have with me Shikha Mataramani. Shikha is the founder and president of the Indian Prader-Willi Syndrome Association. And without much delay, I'll hand over the mic to Shikha to tell us more about what she does and what the Prader-Willi syndrome is. Shikha, over to you.
Hi, thank you, Meenakshi, for introducing me, and thank you, Caregiver Sathi, for thinking that I'm eligible to be here today. It's been a long journey. I am Shikha Mataramani. I live in Kolkata. I have a son who's 18-year-old, and he was diagnosed with Prader-Willi syndrome when he was between 8 to 9 months age. So his birth I had a very smooth pregnancy. I never thought that anything could have happened. But after his birth, my son was kept in the NICU. And that was the time when I got my consciousness after a C-section, because there was a meconium aspiration during the time of my delivery. And I thought it's probably because of that my son is in the NICU. And I don't know, it was my sixth sense that the first time I held my child on my lap, I was taken to the NICU on a wheelchair after a C-section, and I held him. And seeing him with all the tubes on his body and, with external oxygen support, and he was given feed from his nasal tube. And I just had a feeling that there is something which is not right. And I belong to a family of doctors. My elder sister, my brother-in-law, they're all doctors in America. So the initial few months, whenever I did my monthly pediatrician visits for my son, the pediatrician kept saying that it's all right, it could be delayed milestones because of the meconium aspiration. But somehow that was not very, and she said we can wait, and they were just beating around the bush. But somehow that just did not come through me very well. And even when I spoke to my family, my sisters back in the US, they also could not believe it, because my son would not cry. People would come to my house and say that it doesn't seem like there's a child newborn in your house, because we can never hear him. And he would not really respond much to what we would say. So finally, at 7 months, I decided against everybody's wishes to travel to the US. And I would again say that at that time, 18 years ago, I had the provision to travel. I had the facilities, and I could support myself to go abroad and get myself diagnosed. Because here I had failed. Literally, I visited many doctors. Nobody could give me a diagnosis here. So at 8 months, when I took him to the US, and there was an Indian doctor who was actually from Vellore, who saw my son at first glance, and he said he looks like a typical Prader-Willi child who has typical Prader-Willi features. And I'm 99% sure, just to be 1% sure, let's just do the DNA methylation test. And we did his test, and which came through as Prader-Willi syndrome. So that's how my son was diagnosed, and that was 18 years ago. And at that time, we had not even heard what Prader-Willi syndrome is all about. So, that's my journey of diagnosis for my son.
That definitely sounds like something to deal with a diagnosis which you're not very familiar with, and then think about how things are going to go from there. So taking from there, Shikha, can you tell us a little bit, about this condition itself? Not many of us are familiar with the Prader-Willi syndrome. And also, if you could tell us, so you told us how you entered the journey of the diagnosis. Can you tell us how you entered the caregiving aspect of this journey, and how you have evolved, and how the whole journey has evolved over these years?
Yeah, definitely. I would like to tell that and share it with all the parents who are watching this. At first, even now that when I'm counseling other parents, at first it's devastating. It literally feels that the entire world is falling apart. Now, my first question also was, what is Prader-Willi syndrome? And the basic answer in a very layman's term, which Sorry, just iPad fell. Yeah. So the basic answer which I got from everybody was that it is a compulsive eating disorder. And at that time, I just thought that how can a compulsive eating disorder be as bad? It is just eating. So what if my child will eat more? But then when I started reading more and more about it, and I was in the US at that time, and initially I was all alone because my husband couldn't travel with me, and it's not very easy to go abroad at just get yourself, it's pay for the treatment and everything. But thankfully my sister was a doctor, so I got a lot of advantage because of that. And when I would just sit and cry and literally was falling into depression, that is where she was very strict, and she would go to work, she would come back from her clinic, and then she would see that I was not doing anything the entire day. I would just be crying. And that's when she told me that if I am passing those vibes to my child, he will never grow well, and he is absorbing all the vibes and the sadness from his mother. These all the children are very sensitive, they can feel it when their mother is not up to it. And I wouldn't say for anybody, but for every child, not just for our special children. So she kept telling me and pushing me that you need to read more, you need to do more for your child. Now this is a situation which has happened, and you can't be so selfish and just let go of it. You need to work hard and make the best of what you have. And at that time I started reading a lot about Prader-Willi syndrome, and I think God made things fall into place with me. I found out that there is a National Prader-Willi Syndrome Association in America, and I wrote to them. And when I wrote to them, I found out that they were having their annual conference during that span of my visit, like within the next 1 week. And since I was the first Indian to ever register a Prader-Willi case in the world database, they funded my conference visit with my son. And it was again very fortunate that it was just 1 hour drive from my sister's house, and I just felt that when God gave me something to deal with, he was giving me the ways to handle everything on its own. And I attended the conference, and that is where when I met all the children and all the parents of my sailing on the same boat, that gave me a lot of strength to understand how to go about this with my son. Now I'll tell you a little bit about Prader-Willi syndrome, since not many people are aware. So when my son got the diagnosis and I attended the conference in the US, I came back with the entire motto, which they always told me, that go back to your country. Since you're the only Indian who's ever spoken about having a child with Prader-Willi, I'm sure there must be many other cases which are not diagnosed. So Prader-Willi recurrence around the world, it says, is 1:14,000 births. Now, in our country, the actual database and the statistics are not really available even now. A lot of children are diagnosed at a very later stage when the obesity starts showing. Now, it's not only an eating disorder. When the child is born in Prader-Willi syndrome, the child, usually a male child, has hypogonadism, which is they are born with undescended testis, which later has to be got down after a surgery, which is a very typical 99% case in all Prader-Willi male births. Then they have a very feeble cry. They have poor sucking and swallowing issues. They have a failure to thrive. So when they are born, they are very weak. They have a weak birth. They have a low birth weight, and they have almond-shaped eyes. So there are typical characteristics where a pediatrician can actually diagnose Prader-Willi syndrome, which is now much better in our country, but at that time it wasn't. Even during their first summer, when it sets in, they have a thermoregulation problem in their body. So they will adapt to the environmental heat, and they can have like prolonged fever, which doesn't actually is not fever, is just a body temperature which is irregulated. So these are general characteristics of a Prader-Willi child. But at birth, definitely, if there is any child, I would appeal to the pediatricians, because early intervention and early diagnosis can do a lot more benefit to a Prader-Willi child in their upbringing as well as the family. So if I would really try to tell the pediatricians, when I came back, I was told that it's just a one-page subject, which one-page what they read in their medical school, and I will not blame them because there are so more than 7,000 rare diseases in the world. So with Prader-Willi, what they can actually look out on is that when the child is born, and they can talk to the mother if there was, since Ansh was my first child, I did not know what a fetal movement during pregnancy is all about. So now with my second child, I know that when I compare the two, I know that there was very less fetal movement in my stomach at that time. Compared to even my friends, when I would talk to them at that time, I would feel, but it was not something very significant. So we let go. But if a child is born with a low birth weight, and if it's a male child who has hypogonadism, if they have failure to thrive, if they have weak cry, and then I would certainly suggest the doctors to go for a chromosome analysis and do a DNA test, and just to rule out Prader-Willi syndrome. If you want me to tell you more about the advanced stages of Prader-Willi syndrome, then between 3 years to 5 years, the food-seeking behavior sets in. So obviously they are born with delayed milestones. So everything is achieved with therapy. They need speech therapy, physiotherapy, occupational therapy to achieve the things which are very easily achievable for any normal child. But with the help of therapies as early as possible, all Prader-Willi children can reach as per their peers, at little later, but they can achieve everything. And from 3 years to 5 years, there is a food seeking issue which starts with the children. The moment they start going to school, and they can never tell their parents when they are full or when they are hungry before that. So considering that the child is born with a low birth weight, the parents keep overfeeding the child, and they feel that he's weak. That's the reason he's unable to overcome the milestones. So probably if we feed them more, they will be doing things faster. They will gain their strength, but that's not the case. So I try to tell all parents with Prader-Willi children, that the house environment, the food environment in the house, of the timings, the discipline, the food discipline is very important. We can't expect that we are having a bottle of Coke and chips and we expect our child and depriving that child not to have it. Because in a very simple term, it is how addict, they are simply food addict. So they are thinking about food 24/7. So it's a very, very challenging disorder. And as age comes, it gets worse with age.
I see that you're really emphasizing on the need for early diagnosis, which I think helped your son Ansh in a big way, given that you're coming from a family which has medical connections. So I think in most another thing that I want to focus on more regarding your caregiving journey itself is that definitely it's not going to be easy, but what were the main challenges that you faced, and what were the frustrations that it was leading to for you as a mother, as a primary caregiver?
Frustrations to name could be many. The biggest frustration was to make the society understand that there is something called an eating disorder. As simple as, grandparents, they love the child a lot. For them, feeding is in India especially, even if you are sitting on a dining table and we finish our lunch, already the dinner is being discussed. One meal, food is really given a priority. Even when we are entertaining guests, our first thought is that it's very food centric. Our society is very food centric, unlike the West, which is very nuclear. So in a way, it's easier for Prader-Willi children abroad. There are not many temptations, but here there are a lot. And my biggest frustration was, and even now it is, after my son is 18, is people not understanding that if I'm stopping my son to eat, it's for his benefit. And initially it was even worse, because when he got his diagnosis, everybody thought that I'm underfeeding my child and I could be a very cruel mother. But I tell all the parents who I'm counseling also that, those people are not going to be standing for your child tomorrow. It's you who will be facing the consequences. So you need to decide what is right and what is wrong for your child. And if people don't understand what you are doing, you do not have to give them explanations.
I know, I feel what you're saying because I have a 4-year-old boy myself, and I understand that feeding is a very big aspect of a child's growth, and it's also a very big part of our culture. Like you said, celebrations, whenever there is anything to do with happiness, food is a very big part of it. And I think in Indian culture, the variety of food you get during celebrations, it's huge, and that can be quite it can be quite a challenge to tell your child in front of the relatives and everybody around that you can't be eating so much or putting certain restrictions. Yeah, it could be really
and
tough.
People hiding and feeding him, that was that was really very challenging for me.
Correct. I hear you. I totally hear you with that. Shikha, what I would want to also know is that how did you manage your other responsibilities, given that your caregiving must have taken a lot of your time and a lot of your energy? How did you manage your responsibilities towards work or family related responsibilities? You say you have another child too, or even yourself. How did you manage all these responsibilities with caregiving?
I think I've the first 5 years after my son Ansh was born, I forgot what my life was all about. It was only about him. It was only about running behind him, his therapies. Sorry. Yeah. It was only about him, and I didn't know my friends, nothing. But after 5 years, I had to shift out because it was, I actually felt that these children can be manipulative also. So he was taking advantage of his grandparents' emotions. So we decided to move out, but still remain in the same community building. And that is when I also got a nanny to help me take care of him. But it was very challenging for the first 5 years because that was something which nobody else could do and only I could do. Follow up his therapies, take him from one place to another. Even in Kolkata, we did not have proper therapists available. So I had to keep going to Mumbai, and later on I shifted my base to Delhi, but earlier it was Mumbai, where his speech therapy and his physiotherapy was taken care of. And we didn't, I had to stay at a relative's house for a very long time and, shuffle between Calcutta and Bombay, and take auto rickshaws and go to places with his for his therapies there, and sit through it, learn the therapies, and make him do it on my own, because certain times the therapies could be very expensive. And what my sister had taught me in America also was that make sure that whatever you are communicating with him is productive. Don't do baby talks with him. No, nothing like, oh, you're such poochie poo and thing like that. So I always thought of talking to him about things that made sense. And I took that advantage of traveling with him a lot. One thing which really worked out well with me is that because I had taken him out for his diagnosis, for his treatments, I got very used to traveling out with him, and that travel gave him a lot of exposure. So he became very smart in those terms, very well exposed, and he loves to travel now from the beginning, and we enjoyed traveling with each other. And yeah, so that's what, the therapies and all. Then later on from Bombay, we had to shift into Delhi because my son got epilepsy along with Prader-Willi Syndrome. And he would get seizures, and we needed a specialist, and the Bombay doctors couldn't treat his epilepsy. So we shifted base to Delhi and annually. So for the first 5 years, coming back to that, the caregiving was very difficult because he could, my son first walked his first few steps in Joggers Park in Bombay. I remember after his therapy, every morning I used to take him there to walk, morning, evening, hold my fingers and walk, and he walked his first steps. And I had nobody to tell at that time about his achievements also, because I used to travel alone with him. My husband was very busy with his work, and which was very important. Again, somebody has to maintain the finances while I was doing this. So I wasn't working for the first 5 years. After 5 years, when he was more settled, when he started going to school and I could foresee, and his therapies were not required. I kept a fitness instructor for him to come home, and I had a little bit of help from my home side. That is when I started doing my work. I started helping my husband for his business.
Yeah, that definitely seems like a long and arduous journey over there. So, you mentioned that you learned a few things through this journey. Like you gave me an example of traveling, right? You learned that traveling with him, or the topics that you discussed with him, not just the normal baby talk. You wanted him to mature and know things around you. Something similar to that. What were the most important things that you learned through these caregiving experience? In terms of it could be something about yourself, or it could be certain successes that you enjoyed, small bits of success that you enjoyed, with your son.
The most important thing that I learned in this whole, having a child with special needs is gratitude. Because I feel that before that, we were taking life very easily, valuing the smallest things and the little happiness that we got from everything that he did. That is what came into us, the gratitude part, that thanking God for, even if he has today behaved well in school, picking him up from school and just looking at the teacher and waiting what she had to say, how his day went. And the day she said that, okay, today Ansh did not pick up food from the floor, or he did not eat a Shai's tiffin. That itself was rewarding, which I don't think any other normal parent would even think about. I mean, they would be happy if the child is sharing, but for me, that was apprehension. Every day picking him up from school I would go with that fear that what has he done today, that part. So I feel that it made me more grateful for the smallest things. And again, I will come back to the previous question. I'm really sorry, I forgot to tell you when you asked me about my second child. So after my son turned 5 or 6, that was a time when I started leaving him a little bit, detaching a little bit, although foreseeing every minutest thing that he did. But it's not that I had to be with him 24/7. So I started doing my work, going out and trying to build my friends and my socializing. And I was still not ready for having another child. And I started my NGO for Indian Prader-Willi Syndrome Association, which was to help other parents to get diagnosis for their children, for early intervention, so that they wouldn't have to go through what I did. They would not have the privilege of going and traveling and getting a diagnosis. So that was the time when I really started focusing on building the Indian Prader-Willi Syndrome Association. And we never thought that we would actually want to have another child. We thought that Ansh is he has come for a reason in my life. And the reason is to show that path to every family who has a child with Prader-Willi syndrome in this country. So that became my goal of work. And my second son came in very later, when Ansh was 14 years old. So there's a huge age gap, and I just thought it was God's way of rewarding me and telling me that now you're ready to, see how a normal child grows.
That is huge. That is really a very interesting perspective of how you were thinking about that. Shikha, what you've shared in terms of your caregiving journey, it really seems quite consuming and difficult. I would like to ask you, how did you find help? How would you reach out to help? And did you find enough support, given that, the situation is not easy for anybody to understand because we don't have enough information in terms of family or in terms of people around the society? How did you manage to find help?
I think I've still not managed to find help. This is something which only the parents have to bear. There will be nobody who will help, but you have to take help. You have to literally shamelessly take help from people. And if you want to do your own thing. And I think a lot of parents, they live in that guilt, which I did for the first 5-6 years, that just because my child is got special disorder, I can't, I can't enjoy so much. I can't be so happy. I can't leave him and go out to watch movies. I cannot go out with my friends. I cannot do my own thing. How do I leave him? And that is something which I got out of. And I tell every parent to come out of that apprehension. Because today, if you are spending quality, I realized it's quality versus quantity. So I started giving quality time to my son, and got help from people who I was hiring, honestly. I had my in-laws, I had my mother-in-law, and to foresee things. But not every house has a different situation. So wherever one can find help, you really need to look for help and work it so that you don't stop living. You have to live your own life. You have to make sure that you and your husband are happy together. Because I have in this journey seen a lot of families break out of frustration. And that is even worse, because the child is the ultimate sufferer. Because I still remember there was a child who came to me for counseling, and the mother had left the child because of the frustration. The father doesn't do enough. The father said the mother doesn't do enough. So that is a constant battle which will happen in the house. So how do you decide what is more important for your child? And I did a counseling for both the parents, and that was a time when the child actually saw the parents together after a long time. When they walked out of my house, the child, she was so insecure that she did not let go the hands of her mother and the father. And she was not she didn't even want to say bye to me, because she was just too happy that they were all going home together. Although eventually it didn't, unfortunately, materialize for them, and the child is still living alone. But it's very important that your happiness is taken care of.
Yes, totally agree with you, Shikha, on that. And also at Caregiver Sathi, we always try to focus on the caregiver stress in a way that it doesn't lead to burnout, because the whole caregiving journey can get pretty overwhelming. As you said, it can cause rifts between relationships in the family itself. While picking from there, I would like to ask you, like what are the things that you learned over a period of time that you became confident in, and how did you deal with stressful situations? Like something like what you just mentioned. How did you learn to deal with these kind of stressful situations?
See, dealing with stressful situations time and again has made me much more stronger. So try to overlook a lot of things, especially when I'm doing my own thing for my own happiness. And there are certain behavior meltdowns that my son has, which I would be very much paying more attention towards earlier, and I would take a lot of stress about it and not enjoy my moment. I started overlooking. I said that worst comes to worst, what would be the intensity of the damage? So started weighing that. So if the intensity is not much, and if I can let go of things, you have to start to let go. So that is one thing which I realized. Also, dealing with the stress, it's not always easy. I do have my meltdown moments too. There are times when I am completely, I have a downer and I cry. But then again, after crying for a bit, I make myself understand that I'm very strong. And when I have to be an example for many other families that I'm working with, so I need to put everything together and move on. Let go of all the things that has happened with my son. Now that he's 18, he has his own mind, and he is over smart with all the exposure that he's got. So he, can talk badly and get away with it. So we have to be forgiving, because it's not him who's doing it. It's his syndrome which is making him do these things. It's just a moment. So there can be happy moments, there can be sad moments. It's a part of life. And one more thing, very, very important is, which I want to tell all the parents with children with special needs. It's not you alone who is having these happy and sad moments. I have a lot of friends who have normal children, and they are struggling too. So there are a lot of things which they are struggling with. I think we are better off in those aspects. So just see the positive side, the bright side.
Yes, definitely. I think that you made a very important point there about letting go of certain things. I think that was very important for me as a takeaway. And the other point that you made about what is the worst that can happen, right? Like we probably think about little things for too long, but the worst that could happen may not be all that big. Uh, Good points there. And taking from there something very important that anybody needs to do, especially in a caregiving journey, is taking care of yourself. So I'd like to focus on how did you manage to take care of yourself, hold yourself together in this situation, and what did you do as a routine besides taking care of your son? I'm sure that wasn't you didn't have too much time there, but what were the little things that you did that gave you happiness? Uh, that was a little taking you away from the situation that you had to do in terms of caregiving.
So it was very funny that at the age of 35, I decided to start playing rugby. And you, as you all know, any sport, I used to be sporty in my school days. And I just felt that that was my way of letting go and just, let go of all my frustrations. And that was a time when I was just forgetting my house. We were not allowed to access our phone for that 2 hours of training that we did. So we reached to about I started playing a level up to playing all India rugby tournaments. And then what I really enjoyed earlier used to be swimming. So I taught my son how to swim even faster than any normal child learned. Like maybe he didn't learn to walk and talk like a normal child, but he learned to swim before any normal child of his age did. And so I took those advantages for my son, my sportiness. And another thing which I started doing was singing and going out with my girlfriends. That was a very big stress buster for me. So, once or twice in a month, it was very important that I went out with my girlfriends.
Very interesting. Rare as much as the condition is, it's also very rare to be speaking to a rugby player. So that's my little interesting thing for the day. Shikha, we are coming to the close of this session. Could you share some joyful moments that you've had, during your journey as a family or just with your son? Like the brighter side of this caregiving journey.
Yes, so I mentioned this earlier that we traveled a lot. So the best part about Ansh was he was a very manageable baby when we traveled. So we've traveled a lot together, and in spite of his hypotonia, which is his low muscle tone, he was still very interested, and he would not get tired about, like, if we had to walk for hours, to see certain monuments, museums, and everything. He always had that interest, and I really enjoyed traveling a lot around the world with him. Which was very nice. Another thing which we really enjoyed was in Calcutta. There's a very important festival called Durga Puja. And my son loves to paint, and he's very artistic. So I think in our circle, in my society, I'm the only parent who actually goes seeing 60 pandals every Durga Puja, from one end of Calcutta to another end of Calcutta. And it's a lot of walking, it's a lot of crowd. Even the COVID didn't stop us, because my son showed so much energy, and even I'm very passionate about art and pandals. So we did that together. So these two things which I love is traveling with him and exploring new places and seeing pandals, seeing art, those things.
Thank you so much, Shikha. This was a really wonderful session. We got to learn about this rare condition, Prader-Willi Syndrome, which I think I would not have known about otherwise. And I think it's a great, lot of good insights for all our viewers, all our caregiving community to understand the importance of early diagnosis, how to do self-care, and also, how to deal with the family and the challenges that come with diagnosis of rare conditions. Thank you so much for your time. Shikha, is there anything else that you would like to share with our viewers?
Yes, I would like to talk a little bit about our NGO, Indian Prader-Willi Syndrome Association, which was conceptualized with the birth of my son. And I started it alone. When I came back to India, I was told about two more parents, and we formed this trust, Mr. Rohit and Mr. Anil, from the North Indian part of India. And we registered our trust, and today we are over 150 families all over India. The month of May is actually very special to all Prader-Willi parents and our association, because it's the Prader-Willi Syndrome Association month. And in this month, we try to do, now with COVID, the pandemic situation has shifted everything to the virtual mode. So we would try to do some awareness programs for the parents about diet management, about fitness, about sleep studies, because these children have obstructive sleep apnea amongst all the other issues. They have behavior issues, so we'll have a psychology session. So usually we plan such events during the month of May every week for the parents, and I'm very happy that this will be another virtual program which I can share with the parents, of my group. And so Prader-Willi syndrome, and what we do at Indian Prader-Willi Syndrome Association is that, see, we do not give all the children with Prader-Willi syndrome need growth hormone therapy, which is a very expensive treatment. And we are still having to fight with the government to recognize Prader-Willi syndrome in terms of, how autism, how Down syndrome and everything is recognized. But unfortunately, without the database, without the Indian parents have that apprehension of the fear of society, acceptance and all. We are not being able to get that much database. So the government needs to recognize this. The government needs to fund growth hormone treatment for the children with Prader-Willi syndrome, like the Western countries, which is not happening here. So as an association, this is a constant, zeal of work that we are doing. We need to get something for that. That is happening. We do one-time funding for parents if they have some emergency for requirement of certain tests, for certain injections. So amongst the parents, we raise funds through our friends and family, and we try to help whoever we can. Any new diagnosis, another thing which we've come, which is a long way, is that earlier when we started this association, we always got diagnosed children who were diagnosed at a very later age. But through the work, taking part in so many medical seminars all over India and traveling, having our booths of awareness at medical seminars, last 3 years, we have seen a lovely change in our country, is that the kids are being diagnosed at the first year of their birth, many children. And that is very remarkable achievement for the Prader-Willi Society in our country. And I just hope that the word is spread around, people talk about it, people don't shy away with their child's disability and ability. And we need a proper database so that the government can recognize Prader-Willi syndrome one day.
Clearly, you all are making some really taking some really large steps there, but I see that the road ahead is also quite long. Best wishes to you and your organization with the work you guys are putting together. And as always, we believe that we have to do this all together. At Caregiver Sathi, we believe that you need a companion to go through this journey, and that's pretty much what we believe in doing. Thank you so much for this really lovely session, Shikha. And it's been great talking to you.
Thank you so much.